So depending on how long you do it is what energy system you are working down, right? And you know, there's a lot of different discrepancies on times with Jay. Why people do 1 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, 7 minute. I guess there was a bunch of research out, and if you did it 7, you didn't get more benefit than if you did it 5. But if you did it 3, you didn't get the same benefit as doing it 5. So he stumbled on 5 or 300 seconds. And that's where he kind of factored his stuff into. Now, I have hundreds of programs from him where 5 minutes wasn't anything written in the program. I've seen 10-second holds. I love this one, 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 10 times. It's one of the fundamental things I'll do for our athletes right now. I've seen 1 minute holds followed by A, B, and C exercises. I've seen a lot of different ways that he puts those times together.
So I think some people get into how long can you hold it, and the magic number is 5 minutes. Just to reiterate that there are many ways to eat up those 300 seconds.
Right. And the thing about it is the adaptation is really the neurological adaptation you're looking for stops when you're no longer pulling yourself into the ground. So you should stop. Let's say it's 20 seconds. You should stop and start again. Now, if you want a total 5 minutes, I have no problem with that. You want a total 7 minutes, I have no problem with that. But you need to do it with maximal intent. So,
hey Dan, going back to the skater, if they're unable to hold their back straight, should they only get into a position where they can hold their back straight?
Right. Yep. Again, if you want to be able to bend that knee a little bit further, put a band on it. And as soon as you put that band on and your hamstring engages, all of a sudden you have a tremendous amount of stability when your foot hits the ground. One of the biggest things with Jay, and one of my favorite exercises, and I still do this to this day, and it's really simple. It's a curl press. Okay? So if I was holding a bar here, I would curl it.
There you go. Okay. Go through the curl press.
What I would do is I have a bar in my hand. I would curl it. I would punch it up overhead. I would pull it down. I would extend my triceps. So what Jay would say is, listen, this is bicep curl. So I'm working my bicep. Now I'm recovering my bicep as I'm training my tricep. Then I'm training my bicep. Tricep. So it's a reflexive style of training. And he would say, you know what, if you do this appropriately, you're recovering at the same time you're training. And that's where he kicked into his whole thing on quick style repetitions, which, again, I love teaching younger kids quick style repetitions, and do it with a towel or a band. Here's what I mean, okay? So I have this band in my hand. I tell the kids, put it between your hands and get it in a curl position. Lengthen your pectorals. Don't pull the band apart. Don't pull the towel apart. Lengthen your pectorals. So I can create tension in this by lengthening my pecs. All right? So then I'm going to curl and stop it. Down and stop it. Here, 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 down. And everything is moving like a robot, and you're teaching your brain how to separate those eccentric and concentric contractions violently and fast. Most kids, if you watch them do this, they can't really understand those concepts. And if you constantly teach them quick style repetitions, then they begin to understand their body a little bit better.
You know, using this with some other athletes as well, I think that's one thing that a lot of kids can't do today is quick style repetitions. We've spent so much time pressing against something with force that we've lost that ability to snap.
Well, let me show you. So let's say I'm doing a quick style squat. You see me? So my torso is going to go down, stop, push the ground away, up. One of the things that Jay really, I think what he teaches is, and I'll kind of show this video is, So one of the things that he used to tell me when I'd send him video on some of my athletes, this is probably 15 years ago, he'd say, you have a bunch of torso throwers. I go, well, what the hell's a torso thrower? And I can remember DB saying this later on. He used different terminology, but it was the same thing. So when somebody goes down in the vertical jump and they go to jump up in the air, all the action is occurring from their torso being thrown at where they're trying to go. So they're trying to jump in the air and they do this with their torso instead of, and he'd ask me, what the hell do you use to push the ground away? And I'm like, well, my feet and my legs. He goes, well, nobody's doing that. They're just throwing their torso at the object. You have a bunch of torso movers.
I think a good way that you can measure your athletes to see how that is when they go to push, are their shins parallel to their spine? And I know there's some great jumpers that don't do that, and there's other reasons why that happens. But basically, to make sure that you aren't, I call it, you're heaving your upper body up, or you're erecting your body up into a jump. When they go to push, is there a parallel relationship between their shin and their back? And when you start to go frame by frame, you'll see that if they are hoisting with their back, the shin angle will stay locked until they're completely vertical, which means that their back drove that jump for about 70% of the movement. And at the very end, the legs kind of just finish it off. Or a really good jumper, you will see a leg drive and that parallel relationship stays the same throughout.
Yeah, so the reality of the situation is, he'd say, that's why we have a country with a lot of bad backs, is because all we do is throw our torso. We don't ever push away. So he goes, one of the ways that he would create an exercise to cure that is, so everybody does a snatch grip deadlift or a snatch in general where your hand placement on the bar is extremely wide, right? He would put plates on the bar, so 45-pound plates on the bar, and he'd flip them around so the lip was facing out. Right? So he'd flip the 45-pound plates around so the lip was facing out, and he'd have people go over and grab on the outside end of the lip, so it's wider than a snatch grip. Okay, and then he'd say, "Okay, squat down, and now give me stand up with that." And what happens is, if you try to stand up with your back, you're pulling it with your fingers. You got no shot of pulling that thing up. No shot with your fingers. If you push the ground away, which you do in a vertical jump, all of a sudden your torso and your legs and everything unwind the way they're supposed to unwind. And that exercise right there has brought me full circle to Franz Bosch. Creating exercises with when there's only an option to get there is the right way to get there. It's called a snatch grip deadlift, or I think you'd say plate deadlift. Grip it on the outside of the plates, and if you have no lip, squeeze the plate together and try to stand up with the weight. It's incredibly hard if you don't push the ground away, because think about how easy it is to deadlift 135 pounds, but it's brutal if you're not pushing the ground away. So I love the idea 20 years later of him creating an exercise to get the desired result that he wanted.
You know, you can see the same thing if you got a K-box, and I know a lot of people don't have a K-box, but you can see it when they do a squat and you have them put their fingers on the wall. And I know it sounds like a minor thing. It completely changes the exercise because they're not pushing through their feet anymore. They're using their back and their upper body. So a lot of times you can use a K-box to see exactly where people are pushing from. You can do the same thing with one leg. And if you're pushing, you have their hands on the wall, and if the box jumps, which is a little scary, it never flips or anything, they're pushing on the wall. They're learning to drive with their upper body through the wall. So a key point with the K-box or any kind of yo-yo type thing is that if that box is jumping, you're not driving through your foot. And then if you go back to primitive reflexology, there's a whole foot pattern where, you don't know how to push through your feet. And what Dan and I have found using primitive reflexes is we see a lot of kids that don't know how to push through their feet. Dan, what are your thoughts on iso holds with the glute ham?
All right, there's two different ways you can do this. First way is to get into a normal glute ham position that everybody in the country knows, and that's at the top. You're at that 90-degree angle, and then you're lowering your your entire body out straight. Well, your knees would be slightly bent, right? The difference here with it being an iso extreme is you are actually trying to force knee extension. So I want you to think about that. Most people have their heels pulled up against the back of that thing, and that's going to happen with gravity and the position that you're in, but you want to try to force knee extension in that position. That makes it iso extreme. It's doing the exact opposite of what you think you should be doing. Okay? So that's one way that he holds the extreme position there. The second way is he would put himself mid-thigh, the pad would be mid-thigh, and then your torso would be perpendicular to the ground. So you would look. Can you see that? This is your head. This is your hip joint. That's your knee joint. Okay? You'd be straight down. This is just lengthening your hamstrings. Okay? So that's the second way.
So your knee is below your hip and your pelvis is sitting on top of the machine.
And the first way that I explained was like that, right? So your head is up here, okay, hip joint, you are forcing knee extension. Two different ways. Okay, and he would tell you that in the programs that he was writing. Torso perpendicular to the ground. Arms folded across your chest. Hang there.